In this video, we're talking about podcasting, and I'm going to share my 7-step process from ideation to capture to promotion and everything in between. Let's talk about podcasting. If we haven't met yet, I'm Nils Smith. I'm your social media guide. I talk about all things about YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and social media. And I also talk about things like podcasting and Web3 and NFTs and crypto. But today we're going to talk specifically about podcasting, and it fits right into social media because podcasting has become in many ways interactive. Audio content and radio content, and even the form of podcasting has moved into video with YouTube. And there's so many different pathways to how we want to build and grow our podcast. And if you haven't yet launched a podcast, there's never been a better time. And so people often feel like I'm too late to the podcast game. You are not too late. We're still in the early days of podcasting, and this is a medium that's going to continue to grow. So I want to encourage you, jump into podcasting, but this is my process. And I think you, as you jump into podcasting, are going to need to establish your process for creating podcast flow. And so I hope this maybe gives you a structure if you already have a process to begin to lean into and maybe enhance your process, or creating a brand new process and use mine as a template to establish yours. So let's jump in. Okay, the first step that I do is scheduling. And so because my podcast is an interview based podcast, I schedule interviews with different people. And so finding times that work for them and just put them literally on a calendar and scheduling them. So I use a platform like Calendly to help with scheduling, or you could just literally manually schedule it. And then I use a platform called Riverside to record it. So I will send that person that are interviewing a link to Riverside so that we record it online. So they don't have to be in the room with me. We literally do it over a platform like Riverside, which is like a Zoom or Skype or something like that. And so I schedule. So my first step in capturing my podcast is scheduling an interview. The second step for me is actually recording. So I go straight from scheduling to recording. Now, a lot of people do prep in between, in that they want to have basically send the person a list of questions or have a bunch of dialogue before they actually record. I have found that in my podcast flow, that the more just natural the conversation is, the better that interaction is. And so I come in with curiosity. And so a lot of things we might even prep in advance. When I used to do that, it became unnatural when we'd re-talk about those things as if we were first talking about them, but we weren't first talking about them. And so I've just let that be a part of the podcast itself. And I found that if it is awkward, or we talk about something, we just edit it. And so it's the beauty of podcasting is we're not doing it live. It's something that we can edit later. Now, we rarely actually edit anything out. And so I have found that I just schedule and maybe give it a general, like I generally want to talk about this thing. But then when we actually record the conversation, it just feels more natural, and we flow through getting to know each other and getting to know what it is specifically that we want to talk about, and what it is maybe that they want to promote, or what they want to talk about. But I don't over prepare those things. I do it in the interview itself right there on Riverside. The third thing I do is edit. Now, this is something that I don't actually do. I have an incredible team that does editing, and you might follow the same flow of hiring someone else out, and that's something we do at Amplify Social Media. So if you're looking for somebody to outsource your editing of your podcast to, Amplify is a great solution. There's a link in our description, or just right here, amplifysocial.media, and we would love to help you in editing. Now, editing now generally comes in two parts. So it's the audio is the primary edit, and that's where most people are going to engage. But because we now distribute most of our podcasts through video, there's also the video editing aspect of this, and video is more complex when it comes to editing. So we'll often do it together and then pull the audio out of the video so that video flow goes most naturally. But you got to find your flow. So I have some podcasts that are just audio, and we edit that in GarageBand or a very basic audio editing platform. And then I have some podcasts that are with video with Riverside that we put on YouTube as well as a secondary distribution platform with video. And so, yeah, you've got to find what is the best flow for you. and whether that's audio and video when it comes to your capture and for distribution. Do you want video to be a part of that? But editing is the next process. So we go from scheduling to capturing to editing, and now the podcast is ready. So the next step that we have is we hit publish. Now this is the easiest step and often the hardest step for people is, you want it to be perfect. You want it to be just right. But after we've edited that podcast file, we've got to hit publish. Now for us, we use a platform called Libsyn, which is our podcast audio host. We hit publish on there, and then Libsyn publishes it to Apple and to Spotify and to iHeart and to all the different platforms that our podcasts are distributed on. And so wherever you're hosting your podcast, you've got to upload it there and hit publish. But until you hit publish, nobody can listen to your content. And so you've got to get to publish, and don't overthink it. Don't overdo it. Get to publish. So we capture it, we edit it, and then we publish it. But we're not done yet. Okay, we've hit publish and it's live, so anybody that's subscribed on the podcast channels is likely to see it and then be able to listen to it. But we got to promote it. And one of the things I found on podcast in particular, and this is where you almost have to go back to old school technology, is that email is such an important part of podcast promotion. And so I found that to get people that are listening to my podcast onto my email list is important. And then on my email list to tell them about my newest podcast is important. And so we use email, but then also social media and other platforms to then promote those new podcasts as they're out. And so one of the things we actually use on social media is even if we don't promote out the full video on YouTube, we'll take clips of the video and put them on social media and then promote to listen to the whole podcast go here. And so you want to make sure you've not just hit published and let Apple and these other platforms find an audience, but you've got to go and take your existing audience outside of these podcast platforms and drive them to your podcast to then begin to engage natively on those platforms. Okay, number 6, you're not done yet. You published it, you promoted it, it's out there, but you want to measure. You want to measure the effectiveness. You want to pay attention to the analytics. Now, one of the downsides to podcasts is we don't actually get as much data as we do off of YouTube or other social media platforms, but there is data points of how many downloads did we get? Where did people download from? What devices? What platforms were they streaming from most significantly? And typically that's Apple, but it might be that you have more engagement on Spotify or another platform. But finding out where it is that people are consuming and then learning from that so that you can better create unique content for them out of that. And so you might find that certain topics resonate more, or certain interviews resonate more, got more downloads. That we often just make decisions based on intuition when data is going to tell us something different. But if we don't pay attention to the data, we don't know the reality of the engagement. So get all the data that you can and measure the effectiveness of your podcast. Don't just hope that it's reaching a lot of people. Know that it's reaching a lot of people and how effectively it's reaching those people. And then the last step is to repeat. So you put out the podcast, you've recorded it, you've done your process, you promoted it, it's done well, or maybe not done so well, but regardless, do it again and again and again. And every podcast you create, you're going to get a little bit better. Your process is going to get a little cleaner. And as you build that audience, they're wanting more, and give them more and create more for them. You're not done talking about your subject matter, whatever it is that your podcast is focused on. Keep creating, keep developing, keep expanding, and keep getting better. So repeat. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope my podcast process helps you establish your podcast process. Drop a link to your podcast in the comments. I'd love to go follow your podcast, learn about your podcast, and learn more about what you do and what you talk about on your podcast. Thanks so much for watching. We'll talk to you again on the next video.